Yo, yo, yo. Hope everyone is doing fantastic this morning. This is going to be a fun test for me. Trying to see how this live thing works, and I've got some ideas, some ways of bringing some value to you guys, and I'm going to start right now. Today, what I'm trying to talk about is how you overcome fear as a creative and get started in launching your career and figuring out exactly how you can speak to an audience and support yourself through creative endeavors. And so I've got some fun things planned, kind of a rework of a lecture that I do on a regular basis. I think a lot of you guys know that I'm a part-time professor as well, at a bunch of universities here in Southern California. And so adapting that same thing through questions and stuff that I put out to my audience over the last couple of days. So this is what I've come up with, and I think it's a pretty cool concept and way of kind of exploring this thing. So forgive me with some of the technical stuff, but I'm going to go ahead and share a screen of what we've got going on here. I'm going to start this thing from the beginning, and so really this one, boom. Now we can see that. That sounds cool. So really for me, this one is a really interesting concept of just starting, right? And so you get to this place where we have all of these things of resistance inside of our network, inside of our lives, and they come in all different forms, right? Your mom, your dad, attorneys, accountants, boyfriends, girlfriends, your classmates, your peers. All of them are pulling on you in different directions and starting to discuss with you certain things that would make you not want to start your endeavor. There's criticism, there's fear of failure, there's all of these preparations that need to happen. You need to get your business structure taken care of. You need to get your accounting in line. Do you have an attorney? Do you have insurances? Do you have all of these different things? And really all these people, these concepts, these voices inside your head, they're just vultures that are constantly sucking your will, your money, your desire to get started and to make a profit. And so this concept to me is really interesting and funny because we get to this place where we have this idea. Wouldn't it be great if we could do XYZ? I could be a photographer. I could be a musician. I could be a videographer. I could be all of these things. Wouldn't it be incredible if the way I made my living was through the thoughts inside of my head, and the things that I love to do and that I'm passionate about doing? But what's unfortunate is that we get to these places, these positions where family, friends, concepts start to put the brakes and pump our brakes in terms of what we actually want to have happen. And that's just not something that we need to pay any mind to, or at least too much attention to. Really, you have to get started and work within a particular market segment in order to make it something where you can make those decisions on your own and not listen to these outside influences, outside voices, right? So I put out this post in my Instagram story, and what I said, you can see it up here on the screen, but I'm really curious if you're looking to be within the content space or to work with people in the content space. What's the biggest fear you have? What's stopping you from doing these things? And send me your responses in a DM. And I'm really excited because a lot of people kind of sent a bunch of different responses in, and I categorize them into two separate buckets. And one is the fear of criticism, or the fear that you're not there yet. And the other one is the preparation of things, that you actually are not ready to put yourself out into the market and actually make something happen for yourself. And both are incredibly valid and things that I think all creative people feel in some way, shape, or form. I'm very nervous to put out my ideas because they're a direct reflection of me as an individual. They're very vulnerable things for me to put out in the market. But then the other side of it is that am I actually ready to do something like this? And that both of those elements keep reoccurring at various states inside of your career, different progressions of your career. It's not like they happen at one time and then they just go away, right? You get to certain levels and then all of those things start to pop up again. Stephen Pressfield calls this the resistance. And it's very clever and it's very smart in the way that it puts things together. It's not telling us these things that are outlandish that we can easily say are false. But things like, who do you think you are, putting something like out like this, or it's not as good as such and such, or you'll never be as great as blah, blah, blah. And those types of things are very real, and they're things that we can actually feel on a very real basis. And so I wanted to explore some of these things, and I asked permission for people to share their responses. And these are a couple of things that they had said, right? So the first one on this side is being judged on the type of content or quality content that I wanted to put out. Though I know it won't matter, the type of content that you put out. People not being interested in the music that I make, not being able to get my foot in the door from a creative standpoint. And so some version of all of these, at least the first one on the left, some version of all of these involve criticism, right? They involve criticism. And like I said, that's a very real thing that we have going on there. Oops, I got to get my slides going there again, right? And so really when I talk about criticism, it's one of two things that I think are really important. And the first one that really crystallized this is something that Gary Vee had told me. Not me personally, but when I was watching some of his stuff. And the thing really that you're doing is that you're paying attention not just to the individual pieces of feedback, you're paying attention to the collective market feedback, right? The collective market feedback. And what do I mean by that? I've fallen prey to this constantly. I look at one individual, like a perfect example is my best friend is very opinionated about the art that he likes. And I would constantly be measuring up the things I was doing to get his approval. But in reality, he's not paying me to do anything. A lot of other people are, but he's not. So I really don't care so much about what his actual opinion is in terms of the collective market feedback. What's more important is what is the market telling me? What is the feedback in the comment section on my YouTube doing? What are my Instagram DMs? What are my clients telling me? What are the people that I respect as a collective resounding experience? What are those people saying? And what is that going? Are they saying you're doing a good job? Are they telling me that what you're doing, what you're putting out into the world has value? Is that collective voice the thing telling me I'm doing a good job? And if so, pay attention to that voice. Not the one person, pay attention to the collective voice. But we all fall prey to this. I remember hearing a story, Mark Hoppus, the bass player of Blink-182. I heard this from their then independent record label at the time. They had a show. It's a sold out crowd, about 10,000 people that they're playing to. And they came back. Everyone was hyped because the show was popping, everything was amazing, and Mark said, I'm really sad because there was one person the entire show that was sitting there with their middle finger up pointing at me the entire time. So even at that level of success, what he focused on was this one individual just being a dick, throwing a middle finger up in the middle of the room, and not everyone else just losing their mind, having the most amazing experience possible. And the reason I tell that story is that we all fall prey to this concept. But what's the most important, what we should constantly be focusing on, is what is the collective market feedback in that regard. The second one is know your audience, right? I think we fall into this trap where we try to serve too many masters. And I think that what we should be focusing on is a very niche, targeted area of the marketplace and creating content for those people and making sure that when we create that content that we're creating it for that initial audience. And then we check in and say, is that audience satisfied, right? Is that audience satisfied? You can't please everyone. And in fact, in an internet era, it's actually detrimental to you to try to be serving all of these different people. You should be trying to serve a very targeted niche area of the market. I have no interest in going into serve an area of the market of people that are looking into how to tidy up their home or to do DIY projects or, pet stuff. I don't care about that stuff. My niche, my area is creative business and filmmaking. Those are the two communities that I'm making content for, and they cross over quite a bit. So really, I view them as one entity. I'm not concerned with making it for a different type of fan, right? Even then, I go further down and I really create content for two different audiences, the music space and the health and wellness space, fitness and health and wellness. And so I don't really care about what people think, making music videos, making that type. That's not what I do, right? So I don't really concern myself with that type of area. And I try to be as focused as possible. And again, listen to that market feedback and to hear what they're trying to say. So the next one is preparation. So criticism is the first one. The next thing that was a common response is preparation. So things like, I'm not living up to the hype of the content, competing with others. This other one says, I just started editing, and so I'm worried that my transitions aren't smooth enough, my sound effects won't match up, or getting hired for a big job and letting people down, right? Some form of preparation in that regard. And that's a very valid one. That's, both are incredibly valid. But again, preparation is something that's a really valid experience as well. Am I good enough for this particular job? And I've got a lot of opinions on this, but it all kind of boils down to one or two things. You want your career to continue to progress, and that really comes down to your risk tolerance. And I'm pretty tolerant of risk, and I'm a type of person that will say yes, even though I know I'm not as prepared as I could be, because I know I'm going to figure it out along the way. I have a decent enough trust in my work ethic to know that I'll be able to figure it out along the way. And I'm more concerned with capitalizing on the opportunity than I am saying, well, let me go ahead and make sure that I have all my ducks in a row, my T's crossed, my I's dotted. That's just a different experience. But with that being said, I think that the most important thing to make sure that you have preparation taken care of is to do your reps, right? To continually practice your craft so that what you're falling back on is not this ability to work yourself out of a problem, your work ethic solving it. It's that your craft is something that is there. And so there's no other way of making sure that your craft is taken care of other than practicing all the time. And so if you guys pay attention to my Instagram, I have this hashtag that I've been using all the time. It's called export every day. And really this comes back to a situation that I learned from this guy, Christoph Niemann. Christoph Niemann's an illustrator, and he's had more covers of the New Yorker magazine than any other illustrator. He's in an amazing show called Abstract on Netflix. If you haven't checked it out, you should definitely check it out. And he talks about his craft, his process is to sit down every day, no matter where he is, from 9 to 6 and draw and paint and just illustrate and make things. And he knows that the majority of the things that he creates are going to be complete garbage and they're not going to be able to be used for anything. But he has to get through the garbage in order to get to the 1% great work that the rest of the world gets to see. And so he's doing reps. It's the same thing as if you're an athlete, you have to constantly practice. If I'm an Olympic weightlifter, one of the most complex things that you can do in terms of sport and movement, if I just rely on my strength and show up on competition day and throw up a snatch or a clean and jerk, I'm probably going to get owned by the competition that has constantly been practicing 2-3 times a day, just the most minute forms of that movement and really honing in and doing the reps necessary to perform on game day or on competition day. And so I don't think that there's anything different from us as creators and people that are in the sports world. We have to practice our craft on a regular basis, on a daily basis. So I used to set goals for myself, like silly little things that I would do when I was creating music all the time. I would come home and say, okay, in the next 30 minutes, I got to write a song using only these 3 elements. And it seemed ridiculous, but I was practicing reps. Today, I still do this export every day where I'm creating some piece of content. It could be 10, 15 seconds. It could be a 7-minute piece, but I'm in the trenches on a daily basis practicing my craft. I'm shooting, I'm exporting, I'm editing, I'm going through the production process so that when it comes time to actually pull the trigger in real life and have a client dictate to me what they want, I'm not out of practice, rusty, needing to get back up to speed. I'm in a position where it's something that makes a lot of sense and I can keep moving, right? So do your reps. Do your reps. We've got make sure the criticism's taken care of. Play to the market feedback, not the individual. And the preparation standpoint is do your reps, right? So the other thing I wanted to be discussing is this idea of minimum viable product. Now, this is a super tech idea But I think that has a lot of really interesting application in the creative space. And the reason I say that is it's this concept of what is the shortest path to your first dollar. Now, I got this out of a book by Derek Sivers called Anything You Want. Derek Sivers is the creator of CD Baby. He's the creator and founder of CD Baby. And what I love about this story is that it's so simple how this company was founded. Now, really what ended up happening with Derek Sivers is that he was a performer. He went to Boston Berklee School of Music, and he was in kind of a vaudevillian circus type of environment, but he was writing his own material. And at the time he had created a CD, he learned some basic programming and coding, and on a website, he had a buy now button, and it just took you to an email that you put your name, address, and a credit card transaction, and he would send you a copy of his CD. His friends loved this idea. They asked if he could do that for them as well. He figured out what his time was, what a reasonable exchange of money would be for that time. And so that's how CD Baby was started, was just his friends, servicing his friends, and the opportunity of helping his musician friends sell their product on his website with just a small amount of code. And so I think of that and know that company got sold for $22 million several years later. And all he was doing was servicing this tiny little need and tiny opportunity within the market, and just kept doing the reps and replicating that type of success. So what is that process for you as a creative? Are you in a position where you can get yourself to a situation where it's not something that's going to be a massive payday, but can you play a show? Can you do a piece of content? Can you make a logo? Can you take a picture for someone that is going to be able to give you valid market feedback against something that you're doing, right? The market is going to decide whether or not you're good enough, right? Not your mom, not your dad, not your best friend, not your aunts or uncles or grandmas. The market will decide whether or not you're good enough. And you have to get in the sandbox and start playing in order for you to figure out how that works. But start small, right? Start small. For me, the concept was I was on set kind of as like a set of as like an assistant, but at the same time I was responsible for shooting some different content. Now, I didn't actually get paid in cash. I got paid in experience, number one, very much like an internship, and I got paid in product, number two. But what was happening in that environment is I was learning, I was absorbing so much like a sponge, and then I was getting feedback for my craft in a very real basis, on a professional basis, but in a low-risk environment. And so what is the shortest path to your dollar? That's really what I'm talking about when I say those things, right? So minimum viable product, going back to the actual definition, it avoids the development of a product, and in this case, when I say product, I mean your creative craft, to create a product that customers do not want. So meaning you're creating content, you're creating music, you're creating pictures, logos in this vacuum that you're hoping that people will like, but in reality, the market's not responding to. So if you create a minimum viable product, something that you can just test, taking real estate pictures, making logos for friends' bands, doing those sorts of things, you can actually create a product that the market responds to rather than making something in your bedroom that is being created in a vacuum. It allows you to test key assumptions about customers' interactions with the product. And my favorite part is that it allows you to progress and develop in a real-world environment. So what do I mean by this? Because I'm being kind of esoteric. We think about a company called Instagram. And Instagram started out, some of you may know, as a company called Bourbon. And Bourbon was actually a location check-in app. You would show up to a location, a bar, a restaurant, a nightclub. You would check in, and it would allow people to see that you were there. But what they noticed very quickly was that the service that people were using the most was this picture taking. You would check in and take a picture. They didn't intend to be a picture sharing app. They wanted to be a location check-in app. But people kept using this feature of taking pictures more often than any other part of their product offering. So they pivoted. In a very real world environment, they said, well, this is something that people are using. Let's double down on this, create this experience and make it more viable. How can we do this in a real world environment? That's a perfect example of minimum viable product. And now, obviously, there's billions of people that use that product and service every single day. People make their living off of that. I'm even using it for this particular YouTube live stream. I used it to poll people. So it's an incredibly valuable app. But if they lock themselves into a position where we're just a location sharing app, we have no ability to pivot, we wouldn't have the Instagram we have today. We maybe have Chase Jarvis's best camera, but that's a whole different story. So that's number one. Number two, Kickstarter. This is what the first iteration of Kickstarter looked like, right? Obviously not the thing that we see today, very crude, but the same basic concept. But they started with something small. They continued to iterate on top of it and build this company into what it is today, taking pieces of market feedback, the collective market feedback, adding features, and adapting to the environment that they're in now. The other one, Apple Computers. This is obviously a fake picture, but they just started out making circuit boards. They didn't make computers, but now they continue to adapt and keep that same mindset of a minimum viable product, giving people not just what they want, but giving people more than what they think they want, right? And then claiming that they're the ones that innovated it in the first place. eBay. This is the very first iteration of what the auction website eBay used to look like. Incredibly crude. Just incredibly basic, crude coding, not anything what it looks like today. But again, the same concept of keeping this minimum viable product there, putting something out in the market to test what the collective market feedback is, right? Now, were these people scared? Were they nervous about putting something out in the marketplace? I don't know personally, but I bet they would. I bet they would be nervous. I bet that is a very vulnerable thing. You're putting something out into the market and it's possible that it completely fails. But even if it does, you're taking the risk and you're making steps towards an ideal, a dream that you have. And the only way that you can action these types of things is by putting yourself out there and seeing what the market has. If you sit in this vacuum of your room inside your head, wondering, hoping that something is going to be good enough, but never actually taking the risk of putting something out into the world, just starting, you're never going to receive the information, the feedback, and the experience that is necessary for you to grow as a creative. There's an interesting paradox between the creative and the market. And oftentimes we're at war with one another, but really what is happening is that they need each other. The creative needs the market in order to understand what type of work he or she is going to be putting out. The market needs the creative to experience things and tell them what is going on. That's why music, art, movies, films, all of those things are so important, is because we have a lens, no pun intended, but we have a lens in which we see the world from that is a unique perspective for the rest of the world. It helps us understand the world we live in, experience it in a different way. And so these two entities need one another in order to exist. So it's not a matter of avoiding feedback, avoiding criticism, avoiding the preparation altogether. It's a matter of using this mechanism in this beautiful dance to help you grow as a creative and continue to put out better and better and better products, better concepts, better art, right? And it's very, I guess, metaphorical in that regard. But I truly believe that that's the case, right? So with that in mind, Paul Graham is one of the co-founders of something called Y Combinator, which is kind of this test group. You kind of pitch your idea in a startup way. And so one of his famous quotes is, make something that people want. The fundamental problem, if you die, it's probably because you didn't make something that people wanted. If Instagram only focused on that location app, it probably would have died, because that's not what people wanted. What people wanted was the picture sharing app, and they used that to their advantage, right? And they used that to their advantage. So with that in mind, I would love it if you guys enjoyed this, if you got some type of value out of it, if you considered subscribing to this channel. I'm really trying to grow this community. I put out content on a regular basis on filmmaking and the business of being creative. And this is more the business of being a creative, these longer conversations that surround this in the first place. So go ahead and check out all of the links and things that I put up there in the cards. Take a look around. If you like what you see, share it, give it a like. Like I say, if you like the video, like the damn video, get it subscribed so I can see you in the next one. But I'm so appreciative of you guys tuning into this thing, and hope that I see you guys in the next one. This is Robert Teagarden with the Creative Business Conversation live stream, the first one for me in the can. So I hope you guys enjoy it. They're only going up from here. I just started, just like I'm encouraging you guys to do right now. All right, y'all. Thank you so much. We'll talk to you.